All right, welcome back to Daybreak on this 27th day of April 2020. As we prepare to speak to the government spokesperson, Cyrus Oguna, I want us to take a look at some of the figures, some of the statistics on what we know so far in as far as the situation of coronavirus in the country is concerned. That is the new coronavirus or the coronavirus disease 2019. So far, we have 355 total infections. Out of these, 106 have recovered, 14 have died, and therefore the active cases as we are dealing with is 235. These are the people currently living the virus, some of them at a critical stage, others just treating mild symptoms. If we can go to the next one. And we also know that there have been several efforts of the government of Kenya to bring back some Kenyans who are in the diaspora. For instance, the Kenyan embassy in Beijing announced sometimes last week that there will be a flight on the 1st of May 2020. The ticket price will be subsidized to $750. That's about just over 75,000 shillings, depending on the exchange rate you're using. And then the Kenyans who will be returning to the country must be holders of a Kenyan passport, and the travelers have to send a biodata of their passport, as well as the visa pages or the Chinese visa pages of their passports to info@kenyaembassy.cn so that they can be facilitated to return to the country. So the government says this is not an evacuation, but just to help the Kenyans who are there to return to the country. But also there have been efforts in London, talking about the United Kingdom. The Kenya Airways had planned to have a flight to Nairobi from London on the 25th of April, but that flight was cancelled. And the reasons are that all passengers returning to the country are required by the government of Kenya to be COVID-19 free. But there is a situation in the UK because they have very many cases of coronavirus. The UK has limited or has prioritized the testing for coronavirus to people who are sick and hospitalized, and therefore the Kenyans in the UK are not lucky. They may not get that test, bearing in mind of that priority. And then the Kenyans in diaspora have been advised to stay there. That's according to a statement that came from the embassy, the Kenyan embassy in London, signed by Manoa Esipisu, who is the High Commissioner there. Of course, also we know that there are efforts to facilitate Kenyans return to the country. But now let's speak to the government spokesperson, Cyrus Oguna. Good morning, spokesperson. And if we may begin with that progress in having some Kenyans return to the country. Can you tell us, despite the cancellation from London, as well as the announcement by the embassy in Beijing of returning Kenyans to the country, how far is that program? Do you know how many have signed up to return to the country?
No, I may not have that figure right with me as of now, but the government's plan is to be able to subsidize for those who are in China to come back to the country. But of course, those who are not able to do that, the government is working very closely with those other governments in those countries to ensure that the rights of Kenyans in those countries are well protected. Yes.
Okay, all right. Of course, we'll be hearing from you as soon as you have the numbers. But speaking about the situation in the country, we now have 355 cases. The curfew has been extended by a further 3 weeks. Exactly what does the government intend to do within those 3 weeks in the efforts to stem the spread of the pandemic?
Thank you so much for that question. Within that, the course of the first phase of the curfew, we saw that our numbers were a bit stabilized. And that is because the curfew really worked as one of the containment measures. And therefore, as we move forward, considering that there are various pockets where we are seeing community infections, especially in Nairobi as well as Mombasa, the curfew had to be extended in order to ensure that those areas where infections have been seen to be growing, that they do not necessarily transmit the same to other outlying counties. So the extension of the curfew is to ensure that the infections in those regions are contained in those areas so that they do not pass them to outlying counties.
Right. And spokesperson, of course, during the time that the curfew has been on, the cessation of movements that has been on, we've still seen people flouting the rules and regulations. For instance, we ran a story last night and this morning of some Kenyans in different parts of Nairobi going ahead with their partying. I mean, how is it so difficult for the security forces to stop such kind of events when they are happening?
It is indeed this is something that Kenyans do not require the police to enforce. This is something that will come from internal, self-discipline, because we all understand why these regulation measures have been put in place. It is something that should be self-enforcing, that we are protecting our own, well-being as a people. I'm protecting my life and protect the life of the next person. And therefore, to the extent that some of our people are flouting these regulations and rules, that is something that can only be attributed to discipline and perhaps not really having a clear, realization as to why these measures are put there. But again, I must also say that a large majority of Kenyans are actually obeying those regulations, are abiding by them. And therefore, even the gains that we've been able to make are gains that are attributed to many Kenyans having been able to abide by those regulations. So the number that we're seeing, that those who are flouting regulations are minimal.
Right.
And we don't expect the police to be everywhere. They cannot be in every doorstep. And therefore, it behoves upon us. And it's a situation that calls that we must have a higher level of discipline and a higher level of patriotism to be able to, obey those regulations.
Right, and spokesperson, we have some images on the screen of what exactly you're talking about. But even as we do so, yesterday we heard from the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Education, Professor George Magoha, saying that the closure of schools has been extended by a further 1 month from the date of opening. I believe it should be as soon as the schools reopen, then 1 month plus. So what exactly is the government planning? Because we heard him say that no exam has been postponed as yet, but also people that have been affected by this break will be given ample time to prepare for examinations. What are the scenarios that you're looking at?
The Ministry of Education is working on a strategy to ensure that as and when the schools open, the syllabus for that period and even up to the time that they are sitting for exams will be completed. It means working around every even weekend to ensure that we are able to catch up, for the time lost. The learning online that is going on. There is also the KICD that has, rolled out education programs on TV stations. But you also understand and appreciate that not every Kenyan has got this. Access to television, access to mobile smartphones. We understand that, but a large majority of Kenyans are able to access that. And therefore, as we head towards the end of the year, during which we'll be sitting for exams, the Ministry of Education will ensure and have already worked out in a plan that they have worked out that every syllabus will have to be completed before we sit for the exams. So they have a plan for that, yes.
Obviously, spokesperson, the online learning or the KICD being offered on television and radio is not very effective. Of course, there are several gaps, so obviously there remains those challenges. But even as you remain confident that the examinations will not be cancelled, that's what I'm asking in terms of how excellent can it be to ensure that they sit the examinations and they'll have the stability of mind and content that needs to be covered within the stipulated time?
And that's what I'm saying, that the Ministry of Education has got a worked out plan to ensure that by the time that the exams are being conducted, that all the learners would have been able to go through the entire syllabus, and they'll be given sufficient time to be able to, even revise and have, the confidence that they can be able to sit for the exams in a more prepared manner. So the date may be disrupted a little bit, but exams will nonetheless be conducted within the year.
Well, that's interesting. The dates may be disrupted a little, but the examinations will continue. What does that mean?
It means that, of course, we've lost a month, right? That month, of course, we are set to open early May, but that now has been disrupted. The opening has been pushed back to June, and therefore that is 1 month that is lost. And even if we're therefore to work out, the plan to ensure that exams are conducted, certainly because we've lost 1 month, it is knowledge, common knowledge that that 1 month may not be recovered fully in as far as, so we may have to push the exams to tweak it somewhat to ensure that even though they are still conducted, but they may not be conducted at the time when initially they were programmed to start.
Ordinarily, spokesperson, the examination begin in the month of October, so I presume that there could be that movement that you're talking about.
But the plan will be rolled out by the Ministry of Education in good time so that everybody will be able to know. But certainly we have lost a month, and that's something that all of us are aware about.
Okay, all right. Let's speak about, there's a document that is in circulation currently, understandably coming from an officer from the Ministry of Interior. You can verify whether it's correct, that proposes voluntary salary cuts for civil servants and saying that the civil servants may give consent for the pay cut. Is it authentic, and how much money are you targeting in this?
I'm yet to see that document that is circulating, and therefore it might be a bit difficult for me to comment on something that I've not really, lay my hands on. So I would request that you allow me to have a look at it, and then I can make a comment after that.
But is there any plan to pursue salary cuts for the public service?
Of course, you remember that the head of state did announce, salary cuts for various, cadres of civil service. And on the basis of that, of course, this is something that would be good for every Kenyan, because we're contributing to the well-being of our people. And if we are known to be very, very welcoming, and we are known also to be very supportive when we have got issues of this kind. And therefore, having voluntary pay cut, if at all that is what it would require, then I don't think it's a bad thing to do. So that may not just be for the civil service. Even you who are in the media, to help another Kenyan would be a good thing.
So will it be as a matter of self-will, or it will be mandatory?
Now, what I'm saying that I've not seen the document, I'm just looking at it from a Kenyan who is looking at the plight of other Kenyans, and so my comment is based on what any other Kenyan would be expected to do in a situation like this. But in terms of whether it's a government policy or government requirement, then I have to lay my hands on the letter, on that document, before I can make any appropriate comment.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Government Spokesperson, retired Colonel Cyrus Oguna, for speaking to us on Daybreak. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have, but thank you so much for joining us this morning. All right, that has been Cyrus Oguna, the government spokesperson, and it's now 1 minute past 8 o'clock. I wish you had time to take a look at some of the feedback that you've been sharing with us, but it's so much. Of course, some of you responding to the conversation with the Ambassador Okuri Atani, the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, as well as when we spoke to the Governor of Kirinyaga, Ann Mumbi, several feedback coming through. Keep them coming. Zinzi Kibiku will make sure that she reads some of them. I know last time we said she would, but she didn't, but today she will, so that's a promise on our side. So thank you so much, and see you again tomorrow. My name is Sam Gituku. Zinzi will be back at 9 p.m. for the latest in the world of news.